Hey, hi there, it's Rob from the Cold Canvas, and welcome to AEW, the All Elite Watchthrough. This is the debut episode of this series, which means I'm going to be going all the way back to 2019 for this episode. This episode focuses on Double or Nothing, which took place at the MGM Grand Garden Arena in Las Vegas on Saturday, May 25th, 2019. Attendance reports from WrestleNomics has it between 11,000 and 12,000 tickets sold, and the pay-per-view buy rate estimate sits around 98,000 pay-per-view buys for this show. I do want to apologize in advance to an extent because the very first episode is going to be a pretty long one since we're starting with a pay-per-view, and AEW pay-per-views are notoriously long, and that was no different back in 2019. Now, I'm going to be going over match by match, but I'm also going to be providing the match ratings, which I'll be sourcing through Cage Match. And then I'll be giving my opinion on that, whether the rating is just about right, a little high, or a little low. Also be incorporating a bit of trivia in each episode. The trivia question for this Double or Nothing episode will be, can you name the 3 separate acts that made their surprise debut at this show? Please leave your answers down in the comments. I'll give you a hint, actually. There was one major male star who made his debut, but there was also a female and a tag team that made surprise debuts on this show back in 2019. Hey, no cheating. Put your comments now. And now on to the event review itself. AEW Double or Nothing 2019 featured a pre-show which was called The Buy-In. The opening match on The Buy-In was a casino battle royale. The rules for that match were that every wrestler selected a card from a special deck ahead of time. The suit of the card they selected determined which group they enter. Every 3 minutes, the deck is shuffled and you'll see which suit comes up next. And after all suits have been exhausted, the wrestler who drew the Joker card will be the last to enter. And this is an over-the-top rope elimination match. The first group featured MJF, Sunny Days, as well as Brandon Cutler. It had Dustin Thomas and Michael Nakazawa. The next group had Brian Pillman Jr. and Isaiah Cassidy. We also had Jimmy Havoc entering the fray, as well as Joey Janela. And Penelope Ford actually joins Joey Janela to the ring on this match. And the last to enter is Shawn Spears. The next group had Billy Gunn and Glacier. It had Jungle Boy in this group as well. We also had the other half of Private Party, Mark Quinn. And then rounding out this group was Ace Romero. Next group had Luchasaurus and Marco Stunt. We had Sunny Kiss, Tommy Dreamer, and Orange Cassidy. And the Joker was none other than Hangman Adam Page. It's very hard to review a Battle Royale type match, so I'm just going to kind of run through a few of the moments that really stuck out to me. One of the first moments was when Glacier spit his ice mist into Sunny Days' eyes. This actually froze Sunny on the top rope, which made it easy pickings for Glacier to eliminate the big man. There was a spot when Joey Janela actually lit up a cigarette in the middle of the match, but he was thwarted when Jimmy Havoc stapled that cigarette to his forehead. There was a really big elimination that happened when Luchasaurus chokeslammed Joey Janela over the top rope and through a table on the outside. Orange Cassidy eventually makes his way down to the match. He kind of took his time on the entrance, kind of hung out around the ringside. It was very on brand for his character, but at the time I had no idea who this guy with the jeans were. But apparently a lot of people did.
Right here, he's knocking out the pins from under him. Oh.
But he was eliminated by Tommy Dreamer. So the final 4 were Hangman Adam Page, Luchasaurus, Jimmy Havoc, and MJF. The faces, well, I guess quasi-faces, decided to all join up and attack MJF, who powders to the outside of the ring. Luchasaurus hits a big boot to eliminate Jimmy Havoc. He charges at Hangman Adam Page, who does the low bridge and eliminates the dinosaur. The bell rings as they think that this is the end, but no, MJF was still in the match. He attempts to eliminate Hangman Adam Page, who holds on the apron, and he sets up for what would be the very first buckshot lariat in AEW history. And after that, he quickly eliminates MJF, and we now have the Casino Gauntlet winner, who will be moving on to challenge for the AEW World Championship.
Hangman Adam Page!
Personally, I really enjoyed this Casino Gauntlet match. It was 24 minutes and 2 seconds long, and according to the folks at Cage Match, you get 5.05 stars, which I think is a just about right rating. I really enjoyed this Casino Gauntlet match. It had a nice mix of some legends, some familiar faces, and some faces that I'd never even seen before, and even some faces I don't think I've seen since. It was really good to see that even back then, in 2019, on YouTube, for the pre-show to their first pay-per-view, it came down to Hangman Adam Page and MJF at the end of this Casino Battle Royale. They may not have been the present of AEW, but it's good to see that the plans were in place for them to be set up to become the future of All Elite Wrestling. We have a singles match up next between Sammy Guevara and Kip Sabian. This is an interesting one too, because as of right now, Sammy Guevara and Kip Sabian are both still active in AEW. Actually, Sammy Guevara is one half of the Ring of Honor Tag Team Champions as I'm recording this. The referee for this match is Aubrey Edwards. Prior to Double or Nothing, I'd actually seen Sammy Guevara perform live here in Vancouver at one of the Ballroom Brawl events. This match started with a lot of mat work between the two combatants, but the pace did eventually pick up later on. Kip Sabian hit a big springboard Hurricane Rana onto Sammy, and once he got to his feet, he hit him with a jumping heel kick. It was evident pretty early on in this match that even back in 2019, Sammy Guevara was a hated heel. You can see him here even gesturing to the crowd as the boos started to rain down on him. He was distracted by this and then got hit by a springboard from Kip Sabian, who landed on his feet. Back in the ring, Sammy hit the missed moonsault into another missed moonsault, which was then hit into a standing moonsault, which got a 2. This is a nice variation on this common maneuver. Later, Kip Sabian hits a massive missile dropkick, going about halfway across the ring on that one. Sammy then hit a suplex that went over the top rope. Both men actually held on, and then he hit the suplex outside on the mats. And it was at this point that I realized how close the actual guardrail and the ring are to one another. This would change later on in AEW, but it was quite jarring to see how limited space there was out on the ringside. Sammy capitalizes on this placement by hitting a shooting star press to a prone Kip Sabian, who was on the guardrail. Back in the ring, Kip Sabian gets his knees up on a 630 attempt from Sammy Guevara. He hoists up Sammy. He hits him with the Deathly Hallows.
1, 2, 3, Kip Sabian, the winner!
This entertaining one-on-one match was 9 minutes and 41 seconds long and got a 5.85 stars from the people over on Cage Match, which I think is a just about right rating. Really enjoyed this one. It was nice when the pace picked up and I got to see a lot of the moves from both of these stars. And as I mentioned, both of them are still active in AEW. So again, that's really nice to see on this type of pre-show match. Next, we had a hype package for Sadie Gibbs. Give me a second here. I'm going to quickly do some research on Sadie Gibbs. As it turns out, this was just one of 3 appearances on AEW programming for Sadie Gibbs, the other 2 being on episodes of AEW Dark. We're then shown Jim Ross making his way to the arena. I remember thinking how huge it was that AEW got Jim Ross. Next was basically an episode of Being the Elite. It showed Brandy Rhodes and also Cody Rhodes and even Pharaoh arriving at the arena early on in the day. We actually also have Cody drinking from a coffee cup that has FTR written on it. We see Kenny Omega backstage, who gives a thumbs up meme. QT Marshall attempts to give Matt and Nick Jackson their credentials, but he's hit with a super kick from Nick Jackson. And to close this out, we get the old intro to Being the Elite. Then we had the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, Cody Rhodes, and Brandy Rhodes out to address the crowd before the pay-per-view itself gets underway. So now it's time to get into Double or Nothing 2019. The announcers for this are the aforementioned Jim Ross, as well as Excalibur and Alex Marvez, who had been handling the commentary on the buy-in together. Now on to the opening match of Double or Nothing. It's a trios match with SCU, which of course is Frankie Kazarian, Christopher Daniels, and Scorpio Sky. They'll be facing off against a team called StrongHearts, who are from the OWE. OWE was a early partner of AEW, as they were a large Chinese wrestling promotion. They had a working relationship in the early days of AEW, which saw a lot of their performers on AEW programming, but sadly the COVID pandemic really hindered their ability to travel to the United States, which thus hurt their ability to appear on AEW. The announcers are really hammering home the referee's discretion aspect of how matches are refereed in AEW. And they also mentioned that there's actually a 10 count when you enter the ring to try to interfere or to break up a pinfall. There's actually a 10 count as opposed to a 5 count to get out of the ring. So to start off the match, we have Christopher Daniels and Shima. It's not too long though until they're tagged out for Frankie Kazarian and T-Hawk. Frankie showing his strength with a big lariat, but he's later stunned from a chop from T-Hawk. There's a blind tag from Scorpio Sky, who jumps in and hits a picture-perfect drop kick. A powerbomb is reversed from T-Hawk into a pinning combination on Scorpio Sky. The pace really picks up later as all the men start to get in here and are hitting moves on one another. There's a big chop from T-Hawk that sends Frankie Kazarian to the outside. Another chop to Christopher Daniels, who's then hit by a Meteora from Shima. The OWE, or the StrongHearts team, is actually showing a lot of tag team cohesion here as they're hitting a lot of tandem offense on the members of SCU. So I need to bring this up about Lindemann. His ring attire reminds me of a bit in OSW where they talk about the most naked wrestler. Just that look of the short boots and trunks, no elbow pads, no knee pads or anything. It's just very jarring and looks like he's naked. Later, we have Christopher Daniels in a submission from T-Hawk, and he's then hit with a pair of drop kicks from both Shima and Lindemann. There's a big double stomp from Scorpio Sky. Again, the tandem offense from the StrongHearts team is just really giving them the advantage and starting to turn the crowd over to cheering for this trio. Frankie Kazarian goes for a pinfall attempt on Shima, but he's not the legal man, so he actually captures T-Hawk and hits him in a suplex, has all 4 shoulders down, but this is just for a 2 count. Christopher Daniels hits a big dive, and this once again shows how close that guardrail is to the ring. And you actually see that it's not actually even a timekeeper's table, it's more of a timekeeper's podium where Justin Roberts is hit, and he was actually almost taken out by Lindemann and Christopher Daniels on this maneuver. Christopher Daniels hits an Angel's Wings onto T-Hawk, but again, he's not the legal man, so Lindemann comes in, deadlifts Christopher Daniels, and hits him with a belly-to-back suplex. He releases that, and Shima comes in with a big meteor off the top rope. Again, this is just for 2. Now, Frankie Kazarian goes over the top rope and actually hits a Hurricane Rana, and later Scorpio Sky soars over and takes out the 2 members of StrongHearts on the outside. This allows focus to shift to Lindemann, and he's actually hit with the best Meltzer ever.
Lateral press, hook of the leg. It's over. It's over.
SCU are the winners in this opening contest, which went 13 minutes and 38 seconds and got a 7.43 stars on Cage Match, which I feel is a just about right rating. This trios contest to open AEW Double or Nothing was a really entertaining match for me. I was not familiar with the gentleman from StrongHearts, but I did know about SCU through their appearances on Being the Elite. This match did show the, let's call it lax refereeing style from Rick Knox. And it's actually Simon Miller who used to joke, well, I guess he probably still does, that the tag klaxon would go off mid-match and it would just become pandemonium. That was definitely evident in this match here. There was never really any doubt in my mind who was winning this match, but that doesn't mean that I didn't enjoy it from bell to bell. I really enjoyed the showing from these 2 teams. Up next, we have women's trios action when Nyla Rose, Britt Baker, and Kylie Ray square off. This would technically be the first ever women's match in AEW. Allie actually joins the commentary team for this match. You may remember Allie when she briefly actually wrestled under the name Allie, but shortly after that switched to the Bunny, and she competed in the women's division and was also the valet for the Butcher and the Blade. First coming out is the early superstar of the women's division. That would be none other than Dr. Britt Baker, DMD. Excalibur actually said,
Very interesting tactic. She could break your teeth and then give you a referral for some good dental care.
which personally I thought that was a pretty good line from Excalibur. Out next was Smiley Kylie Ray, and then the third competitor, Nyla Rose, which actually makes it 2 future AEW Women's World Champions in this match. But wait, Brandy Rhodes comes out, the Chief Brandy Officer of AEW. And to the delight of not many, she's in her ring gear. So it looks like Brandy's actually going to insert herself into this match. She actually starts to cut a promo on these women, and she says that she actually didn't want a great match tonight. She wanted an awesome match. So out comes Awesome Kong. The 2 largest competitors, Awesome Kong and Nyla Rose, face off. Awesome Kong is attacked by Kylie Ray and Britt Baker, but those 2 are easily thwarted off. And the 2 powerhouses square off again in the middle of the ring. Nyla slaps Awesome Kong, but is hit by a spinning back fist and a big boot. Awesome Kong slams Britt Baker onto Smiley Kylie, and later in the match, Britt Baker goes for a diving crossbody but is caught by Awesome Kong on the outside, who's just showing off her immense power. She turns, but is actually hit by a dive from Kylie Ray, which takes both competitors out on the outside. Nyla Rose hits a firm standing leg drop onto Kylie for a 2. Commentary is actually talking a lot about Allie's upcoming match with Brandy Rose, which we will cover on Fight for the Fallen. Spinebuster hit really hard on Kylie Ray from Nyla Rose. And Kylie Ray actually reverses a powerbomb attempt into a pinfall, but this is broken up by Britt Baker. Britt Baker and Kylie Ray have Nyla Rose up on the top rope as they prepare for a suplex, but this is met by Awesome Kong, who takes all 3 of them down.
Oh, what a slam! Walking tall, standing tall, the baddest dog in the yard. There she is, Awesome Kong. Good Lord!
Britt Baker hits a super kick, and so does Kylie Ray, which sends Awesome Kong out onto the floor, where she is hit by Nyla Rose for a huge spear into the ring steps. Kylie Ray deadlifts Britt Baker, and into a delaying suplex, she bridges, but this is only good enough for a 2. Britt Baker super kicks Kylie's headband off. It goes for, I believe, an Ushigoroshi. It's not the smoothest.
2, 3,
Oh my gosh.
This women's match went for 11 minutes and 8 seconds, got a 4.84 stars, which I feel is a bit low. To be honest, I really enjoyed this trios match. The swerve with Brandy Rose coming out in her ring gear and then announcing Awesome Kong would be joining was a really good surprise. The crowd really erupted for Awesome Kong's entrance. It was the first actual AEW surprise debut. It was great, again, to see the future of AEW on display with Dr. Britt Baker. She was a pivotal part of AEW, not just the women's division, for the better part of 2 years, so it's nice to see her getting some spotlight here early on. Up next, we have some tag team action. We have the Best Friends, Chuck Taylor and Trent Beretta, against the team of Angelico and Jack Evans, who would later be known as the Hybrid 2. I was actually familiar with Angelico and Jack Evans from the time they were appearing in Lucha Underground. They'd actually tag teamed together in Mexico, where they actually held the AAA Tag Team Championships. So they do have some experience together as a team. I'd also sometimes call them the Monster Energy team because their ring gear resembled a Monster Energy can. This match was made on BTE after the Best Friends demanded a match on Double or Nothing. They said they wanted to be featured on Double or Nothing, and it was actually Jack Evans and Angelico who stepped up to face them. So, a night of first continues as we have our first ever tag team match in the history of All Elite Wrestling. Trent Beretta and Jack Evans start off in this match. Trent is still active in AEW to this day. Angelico also competes on Ring of Honor. Jack Evans left the company in 2022, and Chuck Taylor actually now holds a position backstage in All Elite Wrestling, so he's still technically part of the company.
And look at those muscles. Sue's favorite son, Trent.
I'm not sure how many people in 2019 would have caught this, but Sue is actually Trent's mom, and she would become a regular character on AEW for a stretch. His friends go for a hug, but Jack Evans and Angelico want nothing to do with that. Jack Evans just constantly jawing at the crowd, and he's also trash-talking his opponents pretty frequently. He's basically a heat magnet this whole match. There's an assisted flip of Jack Evans for a 2 count on Trent. Later, Angelico hoists Trent up for a slam. He maintains wrist control after slamming him to the mat and transitions this into a unique-looking submission hold. Excalibur claims that nobody kicks out of the Falcon Arrow, despite Jack Evans kicking out of the Falcon Arrow. On the outside of the ring, Chuck Taylor hits a sliced bread on Angelico and then 2 stomps. Trent plants Jack Evans with a DDT, and he's hit from 2 more stomps from Chuck Taylor. There's a great reversal from Jack Evans, who gets out of a toe pick and then turns that into a flipping Pele. Best friends hit the soul food half-half on Angelico. And we get a cinematic first here. There's a crucifix cutter on Jack Evans, who just barely is able to kick out of that one. Angelico flips Jack Evans over onto Trent, and this is again for another near fall. Now Jack Evans jumps off of Trent's back, who is hoisted up on Angelico's shoulders to hit Chuck Taylor on the outside. Angelico hoists up Trent, runs across the ring, and hits a crucifix buckle bomb into the corner. Jack Evans makes his way up to the top rope, and he hits a massive 630 onto Trent, but again, this is only good enough for a 2. Angelico misses a huge dive to the outside, while best friends get Jack Evans up in the electric chair and hit a diving knee. This is followed up by the tag team cruncher. Trent holds on to get the 1-2-3 on Jack Evans.
The winners of this match, Trent Beretta, Chuck Taylor, the best friends.
This match clocked in at 12 minutes and 42 seconds and got a 6.96 stars from the folks at Cage Match, which I feel is a just about right rating. After the match, the best friends want to get a hug from the Hybrid 2. They decide to embrace, but then the lights go out. And when the lights turn back on, it's Stu Grayson and Evil Uno. And just like that, we have our second surprise debut of the evening. But then the lights go back out. Oh my gosh, they come back on. And now they're joined by what would later be known as the Creepers. Evil Uno takes out Jack Evans. Stu Grayson takes out Angelico with a big backbreaker. They hit a tandem maneuver on Trent. Dark Order with a surprise debut, and they do look dominant. They do that weird human throne thing, and then the lights go out again. For me, this was another match where the outcome was never really in question. I really do enjoy the Hybrid 2. I love their work in Lucha Underground and how they would team in the coming years in AEW, but due to the association with the Best Friends and the Elite, the outcome for this match was never really in question in my eye. After the match, they air a hype package. Well, it was more of a recap. It kind of told the story of All In and helped set the stage for how we got to Double or Nothing. And the big piece in this is that they announced that their next major event will be All Out from the Sears Center in Chicago on August 31st, 2019. This, of course, is where Hangman Adam Page will take on the winner of tonight's main event. Moving along, next we have trios action in the women's division. We have the team of Hikaru Shida, Riho, and Ryu Mizunami, and they are taking on the trio of Emi Sakura, Aja Kong, and Yuka Sakazaki. This again is another display of the Asian wrestling influence. As was stated, we were initially supposed to be getting a lot more of these Joshi wrestlers involved in AEW, but unfortunately the travel restrictions from COVID-19 prevented a lot of that from happening. That being said, we did get to see a lot of some of these competitors early on. Riho was actually the first AEW Women's Champion. Hikaru Shida has held the title many times. The action picks up right away with Hikaru Shida facing off against Yuka Sakazaki, but they quickly tag out to Ryu and Aja Kong. Aja Kong shows her power and taunts to the crowd. Speaking of power, we get to see a display of power from the smaller competitor Riho. She also shows off her speed and athleticism as she takes down Emi Sakura for a near fall. Later in the match, we see some more of that speed from the Joshi wrestlers as Yuka Sakazaki does a crazy little cartwheel to get out of this. We see Riho up in a surfboard stretch. And it's really impressive to see Aja Kong in this match. Aja Kong gets Riho up in a stalling pile driver. This again is for another near fall, but the pin is broken up by Hikaru Shida and Ryu. Later, there's a backdrop driver on Riho who comes down high on her head and neck. Aja Kong grabs a trash bin and goes after Shida, but misses. Shida grabs her trusty kendo stick, which she still uses to this day. But Aja Kong gets the better of this exchange. Later, we see Emi Sakura and Hikaru Shida exchanging elbows in the center of the ring. And Shida actually shows off her power as she has Emi Sakura and suplexes her from the apron into the inside. As she's prone, we get a big diving leg drop from Ryu Mizunami. Yuka Sakazaki goes for a big dive to break up that pitfall. Later, Aja Kong hits a double suplex on Riho and Ryu, and then hits a brainbuster on Hikaru Shida. Emi Sakura hits a moonsault. See, the bell rings on this one, but Aubrey Edwards, the referee, claims that it was only a 2 count, so there's a bit of a mix-up there with the timekeeper. Now we have Aja Kong going for a spinning back fist, but takes out her partner, Emi Sakura. Riho flies in with a crossbody to take out Aja Kong. Then we have Hikaru Shida with the running knee onto Emi Sakura.
Tremendous impact. It's over.
Now it's over.
This trios match went for 12 minutes and 58 seconds and got 7.36 stars on Cage Match, which I feel is sadly just a bit high for my tastes. I did enjoy the match. It was good to see 6 competitors that I knew very little about. It established some of the future stars and showed that kind of what to expect from the Joshi wrestlers while they're featured in AEW, but unfortunately, as I mentioned, due to COVID and the travel restrictions, a lot of those plans were not able to come to fruition. And again, we got a future star in AEW with Hikaru Shida picking up the win, and it shows the early stages of what Tony Khan had planned for AEW on this night in 2019. The card keeps moving on as we move towards Cody versus Dustin Rhodes. This was one of the more hyped up matches for this card and was one of the matches I was really looking forward to back in 2019. This match was very heavily promoted via the Road to series that I mentioned that AEW had produced back in 2019. It featured a lot of photos of Cody and Dustin as they were growing up. Oh, hey look, it's Maxwell Jacob Friedman. And like I said, it really played into the family lineage for these two, touched on Cody Rhodes and Dustin being from different generations despite being siblings, and they really actually played heavily into Cody wanting to end Dustin's career. He said he wanted to end the Attitude Era in this match, and that was really one of the strong undertones heading into this match. During Cody's entrance, we get an iconic moment from the history of AEW. This, of course, is the throne that's featured on stage. This is heavily hinting towards the King of Kings gimmick from Triple H. Brandy Rhodes accompanied Cody to the ring, and once she gets to the ring, she actually grabs a sledgehammer. Cody takes that sledgehammer and makes his way up to the throne, and this is when he smashes the King of Kings throne. What I really liked about this moment is that commentary was silent during this entire process. They let the moment build, they let the moment breathe, and they didn't try to add any sound bites or any cues like that over top of it. Oh, look, it's Tony Schiavone. Again, Cody had that attitude killer moniker here on his weight belt. The crowd was very into this match, even before the two men squared off. There's very loud Dusty chants, as well as "This is awesome" chants that were ringing throughout the arena. Two brothers lock up to start the match. Cody actually trips his brother, goes for the cartwheel, and hits the patented Stardust taunt to get under his brother's skin. Later, Cody actually hits the drop-down punch, an iconic move of Dustin's. Dustin hits a dive to the outside, and later, once they get inside, there's 10 punches in the corner. Well, actually only 9 before Dustin hits the Stardust taunt on his brother before the 10th punch. Dustin sets up his brother for a Shattered Dreams in the corner, but while Earl Hebner is stopping Dustin, Cody actually removes the turnbuckle cover.
Well, that's going up on eBay.
Dustin charges at his brother, but he's hit with a drop toe hold and hits his face on the exposed steel. Now this is the moment when this match gets elevated to a whole nother level. If you've seen this match before, you know exactly what I'm talking about at this stage. Sequence is actually the trigger for what I would later know to call as the Cody Rhodes shenanigans intermission. Outside the ring, Brandi actually hit a spear on Dustin, but Earl Hebner was aware of this and went to threaten to kick her out, and eventually he actually does kick Brandi Rhodes out of ringside. She's refusing, but Nightmare Family member DDP comes out and forcefully removes Brandi from ringside so this match can continue. Once order has been restored, there's a near fall on Dustin, and there's actually an iconic camera shot of blood like waterfall off of his face. It's really graphic. The story of this match now becomes Dustin's vision is greatly impaired, and Cody's just picking his spots and hitting Dustin whenever he can. On instinct, it seems, Dustin actually hits his power slam for a near fall on his brother. Cody then locks in a figure 4 leg lock in the middle of the ring and even lands a couple stiff right shots to his brother, but Dustin reverses the hold, and again we see another iconic shot of the crimson mask covering Dustin Rhodes' face. Cody Rhodes removes his Attitude Killer weight belt and is threatening to hit Dustin with it. Earl Hebner admonishes him, but the tables are turned when Dustin actually gets the weight belt and spanks his brother on the bare ass with it. Dustin hits a code red in the corner, which makes sense because his face is covered in red. There's a scary moment on the top rope where they almost lose their balance, but Dustin seems to power through and hit the suplex on Cody. He hits a curtain call on his brother and then sets him up for a crossroads, but Cody gets out of it, actually hits a low blow on his brother. Then he hits a crossroads of his own, but as we all know, you don't win a match with just one crossroads. The two brothers are staggered and they return to their feet and exchange blows. After this exchange of blows, I'm not quite sure what the move is, if it's a crossbody or clothesline, but that leads to a double down and some loud fight forever chants from the crowd. Cody once again hits the drop down punch on his brother. Dustin responds and hits the same move on Cody. Cody picks up Dustin in the middle of the ring and hits a big vertebreaker on his brother, picks him up, hits him with a crossroads. He grapevines the leg, and then...
It is over. By God, it is over. What a wrestling match.
This match came in 22 minutes 28 seconds with 9.38 stars, which I feel is a just about right rating. Cody starts to make his way to the back, but turns back to see his brother and makes his way into the ring. He praises Dustin for everything he's done in his career and how much he's meant to him and having him as a brother. And then Cody drops a pretty emotional line. You'll hear his voice crack, and let's say there wasn't a dry eye in the building when he delivered this one back in 2019.
I don't need a partner. I don't need a friend. I need my older brother.
This was referring to an upcoming match that Cody signed on for against the Young Bucks, which we'll be reviewing in a future episode, and it ends up being the Rhodes brothers against the Jackson brothers. Much like the entrance and in previous points of this pay-per-view, I really enjoyed that commentary didn't step in or say anything over these moments, while an emotional Cody was making his way to the back, as well as while the Rhodes brothers walked arm in arm to the back. They just let those moments breathe, and they didn't try to add in a soundbite or anything to those. Following this match, we have the AEW Men's World Championship Unveiling Ceremony. Comedian Jack Whitehall starts off in the ring, and he introduced none other than the best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be, Bret Hitman Hart. Now, I remember seeing that Bret Hart was involved in this, and it kind of added a stamp of approval to All Elite Wrestling, similar to how they started with Jim Ross on the commentary team. I think it just added some, validity to the company. And, there's Tony Schiavone again. Blinking, you'll miss him, but he is there ringside. Bret Hart cuts a promo, and he talks about how beautiful the championship is and how excited he is to be there in Las Vegas. He then calls out the winner of the Casino Gauntlet from the buy-in, which is none other than Hangman Adam Page. Hangman makes his way to the ring, shakes hands with the Hitman, but then we hear the entrance music of Maxwell Jacob Friedman. Maxwell Jacob Friedman cuts a heel promo, as always. He actually references the assault where Bret Hart was actually attacked by a fan, by a complete idiot at a WWE Hall of Fame ceremony not too long before this. Maxwell Jacob Friedman makes his way to the ring and starts to belittle the best there is, best there was catchphrase, saying that it sucks, and then hits us with his catchphrase of I'm better than you and you know it. This is also the first time MJF calls Hangman Seabiscuit. He demands that Hangman give the title shot to MJF, as he believes he's a much more deserving challenger. Hangman rushes at MJF, who is then met on the entrance ramp by Jungle Boy. This, of course, is Jack Perry, who would become another pivotal part of the future and the present of All Elite Wrestling. Then, sadly, they're joined by Jimmy Havoc. The three faces attack Maxwell Jacob Friedman, and it's nice to see that MJF takes his beat down from the three faces. After the skirmish, attention returns to the ring where we see the All Elite Wrestling Men's World Championship unveiled for the very first time. Now, I really thought this was an important segment in the history of All Elite Wrestling because it does feature Maxwell Jacob Friedman, who at the time was more of a lackey, or a protege of Cody Rhodes at the time, and Hangman Adam Page was just the lower tier member of the Elite. But it was great to see two members of the future of All Elite Wrestling who would actually end up holding the All Elite Wrestling Men's World Championship multiple times featured in this segment. And also Jungle Boy. Moving right along, we go into the only title match on the card. It features the AAA Tag Team Champions, the Young Bucks, against the Lucha Bros. There's a hype package that airs before showing the Lucha Bros attacking the Young Bucks at the AEW announcement for Double or Nothing press conference. The Young Bucks had recently just captured the tag titles from the Lucha Bros in Mexico City. As I mentioned, this is technically the only title match on the card for Double or Nothing, and this was a match that I was, once again, quite excited for. I was very familiar with the Lucha Bros from their time in Lucha Underground. Both Pentagon and Rey Fenix were featured very heavily on that program, and they had won me over as a fan almost instantly with their athleticism on that show. The Lucha Bros make their way to the ring, and it's evident very early on that both teams are very over with the crowd, so there's not going to be your traditional heel or face dynamic for this, as the crowd is just there to see a hell of a match. And boy oh boy did we get one hell of a match from these two teams. Ring announcer Justin Roberts really brought his A-game on these two entrances.
Introducing first, the challengers from Mexico City, Mexico, at a combined weight of 383 pounds, Pentagon Jr., Rey Fenix, the Lucha Brothers. opponents. From Rancho Cucamonga, California, at a combined weight of 390 pounds, they are the current AAA Tag Team Champions, Nick and Matt Jackson. They
Much like the Casino Gauntlet Battle Royal, it's going to be very hard to go beat by beat for this match since it's so fast paced. So I'm just going to hit on a few of the moments that really stuck out for me during this match. There was an insane pace, basically from the hop. The crowd is behind both teams with full support. There's a sequence on the outside where Nick Jackson and Phoenix actually dodge each other's moves and basically have each other very well scouted. This was an impressive match and got a big reaction from the crowd. Matt Jackson shows off his strength with a military press slam and then a spear on the Lucha Bros. I just love a good sling blade. These two teams that are both brothers just have some amazing tandem offense that they hit throughout this entire match. There's a big exchange where Nick hits his Lucha Libre sequence. There's a monkey flip where it sends the Bucks into each other in the corner. There's a hot tag from Rey Fenix about partway through the match, and I could really only describe this sequence as Rey Fenix coming in and then just blowing my fucking mind with what he was able to pull off. Let's just savor this moment here and watch what he executes. Not to be outdone on how sick a hot tag can be, Nick Jackson comes in and hits his perpetual motion offensive sequence, which always is impressive. You can see it here, as well as in the next clip, just how great Phoenix is at selling. I know a lot of the luchadors and a lot of the folks from AEW get a lot of grief for not selling for long enough, but the way he sells the impact itself is truly entertaining. We get some more tandem offense as we get stereo sunset flips that transition into sharpshooters, paying homage to Bret the Hitman Hart, who was in that last sequence. Speaking of paying homage, the Bucks then pay homage to the Motor City Machine Guns as they hit their Made in Detroit move on Phoenix. This is for another near fall. Later in the match, it becomes a super kick party as both teams just start hitting super kick after super kick to one another, and this leads to a double down, a quadruple down, and a huge roar from the crowd. Penta later launches off of Phoenix's back, hits a destroyer onto Matt Jackson on the apron, then Phoenix hits a destroyer to the inside on Nick Jackson. This is for a near fall. The Bucks keep the tandem offense going as they take out the two Lucha Bros. Phoenix actually gets up on his brother's shoulders, hits a big dive to the outside to take out both Young Bucks. The action keeps going back and forth, momentum swings in both directions as both teams hit massive moves, including this Senton Atomico from Phoenix. Phoenix goes for my favorite move, the Flying Nothing, but it's met with two super kicks. The callbacks continue as Matt hits a running kick into the corner, and this is followed by a brainbuster into the turnbuckle, which is paying homage to the Ring of Honor rival El Generico. The Bucks later hit more bang for your buck on Pentagon for another near fall. After teasing it for most of the match, Pentagon eventually hits the arm breaker on Matt. And he follows this up with, I believe it's called Made in Japan. I could be mistaken, but this is a really violent maneuver on Matt. Phoenix continues to target the arm with a super kick to the armpit on Matt. The Bucks then hit a Meltzer driver on Phoenix.
One arm cover! Yes!
This match clocked in at 24 minutes and 48 seconds and got 8.77 stars, which honestly I feel is a bit low. I'd say it should be above a 9. Now, this was my first taste of this epic rivalry between the Lucha Bros and the Young Bucks. The match fully delivered on what I was expecting, and it really gave the fans a glimpse into what the tag team division would look like in All Elite Wrestling. We got tandem offense, we got high speed, high octane maneuvers, we got Rick Knox forgetting what the rules are. It was just a whole lot of fun to watch. And again, like I said, this was a glimpse into one of the more long-running rivalries for the Young Bucks, as they would have many tag team battles and even trios matches against the Lucha Bros during their time in AEW. I, of course, am referring to the Lucha Bros' time in AEW, since they have since left the company. And just like that, we're on to the main event. This will be Kenny Omega against Chris Jericho. The winner will face Hangman Adam Page to be crowned the inaugural AEW Men's World Champion. This is actually a rematch from a New Japan match that Chris Jericho and Kenny Omega had. Again, we have a slick little hype package showing how we got to this stage of the match. We had a very iconic entrance, actually, for Chris Jericho. I called it the Eras of Jericho entrance. It featured the Lionheart era of Chris Jericho. We also had the List of Jericho. My personal favorite, the Light Up jacket. And then finally, the Alpha version of Chris Jericho makes his entrance. He's actually accompanied by the song Judas by Fozzy. But at this point in AEW's existence, Fozzy wasn't quite the sing-along that it grew to becoming. Kenny Omega makes his entrance to the ring as well. If you were to ask me if I was excited for this main event, I would tell you, oh yeah! Shout out to that fan cosplaying as Macho Man ringside. Before the match, there's a Cracker Barrel in the ring. Referee Paul Turner struggles to get it out of the ring, so he's actually aided by Chris Jericho. This is obviously a form of advertising, and it wasn't the best, but it's still much better than what we're seeing in WWE at this stage in 2026. In the hype package, Chris Jericho is hyping up his new move, the Judas Effect.
I don't know if the Judas Effect is real.
We'll have to see if Excalibur is right. These two titans from Winnipeg lock up to start the match. Jericho slaps Kenny, but he's slapped back. We have an attempted V-trigger that's avoided. Jericho blocks a Hurricane Rana attempt from Kenny and locks in an early walls of Jericho in the middle of the ring, but Kenny is able to escape. He's followed to the outside of the ring, and Jericho actually grabs the ring bell. Oh, silly Jericho. Jericho's then slammed on the Timekeeper's podium on the outside. Action continues on the outside, and Chris Jericho actually grabs the camera from one of the crew on AEW. He zooms in on Kenny Omega, who's in the crowd at this point. Kenny then emerges from behind the guardrail, and he spits water or perhaps an alcoholic beverage in the eyes of Jericho. The pace picks up on the inside of the ring as Kenny's hit with a stiff lariat from Jericho. Looks like Kenny's nose is potentially broken. It's at least bleeding from that impact. Jericho grabs a table from underneath the ring, and I believe this is an imported Japanese table because it's not the traditional pressed sawdust one we see in North America. Kenny sees this, adjusts his run, and actually hits a dropkick to Jericho, followed by a huge dive onto the table, taking out Jericho on the outside. Kenny sets up Jericho under the table and then hits a big double stomp to the outside. And like I said, this table is actually still functional, so Kenny sets it up on the outside of the ring. Kenny sets up for a V-trigger when Jericho's in the corner and hits it to the back of his head. Now, the two jostle on the top as Kenny Omega was trying to hit a Snapdragon, but ends up hitting a big back suplex off the top rope. Jericho goes for a lion salt. Kenny gets his knees up. He then hits a V-trigger. This dazes Jericho, and Omega gets him up to attempt a one-winged angel. But Jericho is able to slip out of this and hit a big suplex to Kenny Omega. Jericho goes for a lion salt, lands very high on Kenny Omega on the back of his head and neck, and he goes for another lion salt after that. Later, he vaults Kenny Omega and finally breaks the table on the outside of the ring. He hits his triangle dropkick to Kenny, who again lands high on his shoulders and neck. This is a really rough looking spot on the apron. Kenny later takes to the air but is hit with a code breaker by Jericho. This garners a loud "Fight Forever" chant from the crowd. Trust me, they're saying it. Chris Jericho rolls through a Snapdragon attempt and tries to lock in the walls of Jericho again, but Kenny Omega is able to power out of it. Kenny Omega lines up Jericho for a V-trigger, picks up a head of steam, hits the V-trigger, or does he? Jericho reverses it into another attempt at a Walls of Jericho in the middle of the ring. Another V-trigger to Jericho. He's dazed. He's picked up for another One-Winged Angel attempt. This time Chris Jericho goes to reverse it into a DDT. It wasn't the smoothest transition, but these two professionals are able to power through. Jericho goes for his 15th attempt at a line salt. He's met on the second rope by Kenny Omega. This time they do hit the DDT reversal. It looks much better this time around. Jericho hits a code breaker, and Kenny makes it to his feet, and then we see it. The Judas effect.
Judas effect.
There it is.
The ace in the hole. The back elbow. The luggage hook. And Jericho has beat Kenny Omega.
And just like that, we find out that the Judas effect is real, and we find out that Chris Jericho has bested Kenny Omega in the main event of Double or Nothing 2019. This match clocked in at 26 minutes 52 seconds and got a 7.59 stars on Cage Match, which personally I feel is a perfect rating for this match. But wait, there's more. An exhausted Jericho calls for a microphone and starts to cut a promo. He actually starts to list off the things that AEW has been able to accomplish since he's been a part of the company. How they have a new TV deal, how they were able to sell out the MGM Grand Garden Arena for this event. But as Chris Jericho is cutting this promo, we hear and we notice that the crowd is starting to stir. We're not sure what to expect or what is going on in the crowd, but then eventually the camera is able to find him. Jon Moxley is making his way through the crowd at the Grand Garden Arena and makes his way to the ring. He gets into the ring and squares off against Chris Jericho. The crowd is electric. Moxley hits a DDT on Jericho. The crowd erupts. He even hits a DDT on Paul Turner. Moxley soaks in the environment. He soaks in the electricity from the crowd as he knows this moment is going to be talked about for years. Now he sets his sights on Kenny Omega. The two fight out into the crowd and they make their way towards those iconic Double or Nothing poker chips. And then that moment happens, folks. He hits a DDT onto Kenny Omega. Jon Moxley hoists Kenny onto his shoulders and launches him off of the poker chips. There you have it, folks. We have our closing moment. We have the stamp at the end of the pay-per-view. Jon Moxley has arrived in All Elite Wrestling, and he very clearly has his sights set on none other than Kenny, by God, Omega. Circling back to the main event match itself now, I really enjoyed this one. It really delivered as far as being the marquee match on this major first event for AEW. There's no denying that Chris Jericho was the largest name announced for this event. It's not to belittle any of the accomplishments of the other performers, especially not Kenny Omega, but for a lot of fans, this was their first time seeing Kenny perform on a big stage, and I know he won over a lot of fans, and he turned me into a bigger fan than I already was on this night. But of course, Chris Jericho emerged victorious, so he is the one who's going to go on to challenge Hangman Adam Page at All Out for the AEW Men's World Championship. We'll get to that match in an episode coming up soon. I really enjoyed Double or Nothing 2019 when I watched it in 2019 and when I watched it now in 2026. The people at Cage Match agreed, giving it 9.02 stars, which I believe is just about right. And the runtime was 3 hours and 51 minutes. I remember back in 2019 wanting something like AEW to come out. I had lost interest in WWE and I was searching for an alternative. And that's exactly what AEW was. And after this event, I had found what it was that I was looking for. I drank the Kool-Aid, as they say. And to quote Brian Zane from Wrestling with Regret, like what you like, don't be a dick. Circling back to the trivia call-out that I made earlier in the video, a lot of people remember the iconic Jon Moxley debut after the main event. But did you also remember that this was the night that the Dark Order made their debut in All Elite Wrestling? Did you remember that this is when Brandy Rhodes brought out Awesome Kong? If you did, I'm quite impressed. If you didn't, don't feel too bad, because I had totally forgotten that this is when Awesome Kong debuted, and for some reason I thought Dark Order only made their debut on TV on Dynamite, so I wouldn't have got this question right if someone asked it to me. The focus now shifts to the next episode, which is Fyter Fest. As we keep moving along the show, it's going to be more and more firsts, and this one features the first unsanctioned match in the history of All Elite Wrestling when Jon Moxley takes on Joey Janela in the main event. Well, I guess not the main event since it's unsanctioned, but it's the last match. You know what I mean. You know what I mean. If you like this video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. If you didn't like the video, I guess you could still comment and tell me why you didn't like it, or tell me what I did wrong. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you very much for watching.